Waffle, waffle, waffle.
Hello and welcome to Die Rolling. I'm the ever excitable Adam, and you're joining me here for a Wednesday Waffle. Today's Wednesday Waffle was supposed to be brought to you by role-playing games. However, I had an unfortunate experience whereby my Monday night was supposed to be playing a role-playing game, but I was let down. I don't know whether any of you have experienced this before when you've tried to run a game of some type, whether that be in a role-playing game or a board game. But yeah, it's always a bit disappointing, especially with role-playing games, because you do have to spend a little bit of time beforehand doing some prep. And I'd done a lot of prep for this, so I was really looking forward to it, and then I was let down. But never mind, it happens. People have lives. So going forward, I will hopefully doing a role-playing game, a Wednesday Waffle for you guys once I've run this specific role-playing game. And my idea behind that one is going to be talking about role-play games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons that you should perchance have a play of. So what have I been looking at this week? Well, I have been looking on Kickstarter. Nothing, I'm afraid. I've really not been at all interested in kickstarting anything or looking at any Kickstarters. However, I did take a look at Stars of Acarios because we're going to be playing on the channel later on this year. So yeah, that does look pretty good, and you can late pledge that. There's essentially a big campaign game set in space where you do space battles and you explore planets. It looks bananas. So yeah, there's a few of the late pledges out there, including League of Dungeoneers, I believe. They've got a late pledge. But yeah, there's just loads of stuff. And also Oathsworn, I looked a bit more into that after I started playing it and had a look at what other options are out there. So you can buy a bunch of stuff from them to kind of, yeah, really elevate your gameplay mainly for me, the thing that's kind of stood out for me was the metal coins. I absolutely love metal coins in a game. They just add so much to a game. That's pretty much the only thing I will bling a game out with. And if I could have just a drawer full of metal coins from games, I probably would. But yeah, anyway, so Kickstarter wise, not much really. I would still recommend checking out Among Cultists. They're still currently, I think they're funded, but they're still currently on Kickstarter. That is a great social deduction game where you are trying to figure out who's the cultist and kill them before they sacrifice everyone. It's a really fun game. We played it on the channel, and I'll be bringing it along to Aircon and UK Games Expo as well. So if anybody wants to give that a go, just let me know beforehand, and I will arrange a game somewhere at some point to play that with you guys. What have I been painting? Well, Oathsworn. I sat down. I played the first chapter of Oathsworn, so that's a story kind of mission, and then there's a encounter phase. The encounter phase being a miniature kind of combat encounter. We got the standee version rather than splurging on all those lovely minis, just because I thought it would get it to the table quicker if I didn't have to paint up all the miniatures for the enemies. And it kind of spoils the surprise of opening up one of those boxes and then having to, seeing what it is and then having to kind of sit there and paint everything. Eventually getting on the channel. So I've got some miniatures. I painted up the 4 heroes that I'm attempting to play the game with and 1 ally. I think I might have to paint up some other allies because I believe if your heroes get knocked out, then an ally will replace them. So I should probably have a couple of backup allies. So they'll probably hit the table again. What else have I been painting? Some more... I was going to say some more Shadows of Brimstone, but I don't think I have been. I think pretty much Oathsworn was all I've done. I've stalled a little bit with Dungeon Saga Origins, but I'm hoping to get back onto that and film some painting videos for you guys. Just got to get back into that this week, hopefully. But yeah, painting-wise, just Oathsworn, really. Playing-wise, sat down, played Oathsworn. That's it, really. I'm going to be getting back to the table with Shadows of Brimstone, the Tridarian Strike Force. Well, actually, guys, yeah, Tridarian Strike Force. That's what I'll be getting back to the table, and we'll be playing the 4th mission of that campaign. I've done 3 missions so far, including 2 kind of bonus missions, and yeah, it's fantastic. The very last mission I've done, however, the 3rd mission in the campaign, there was so many different rules for all the different enemies coming in, the level itself, the different characters. it blew my mind. So I made a few mistakes, and by a few I mean I made a couple of mistakes, forgetting that activating on a tile with like Necronauts would cause sanity damage, things like that. Overall, though, it was a really fun mission, and so far through my Shadows of Brimstone adventure kind of games I've played, they've been very lax on the kind of like combat side of things. You'll have probably 1 or 2 combat encounters, maybe 3 in a mission. This one was just bombarding you with enemies. It was great fun, but yeah, chaotic, hectic, and just really interesting. So I'm looking forward to you guys seeing that. That will be up either not next week, the week after, maybe, depending on how long it takes me. Well, how long the video for episode 5, which is mission 2, takes me to. How long that is. If it's too long, then I'll have to split it up, and it'll be 2 weeks, and then you'll get the next one. The last one I edited, I really should have just done in one video, so apologies for that, guys. I'd edited up to a certain point, and I was like, right, well, the other part of the video, that'll probably, take me through to another video. But however, when I got down to editing, I had loads of gaps in there. So by the end, it was only like 10 minutes or something. So apologies. I will try to make sure that I don't just split up videos for the sake of it to, keep you guys salivating for more. That's not me. So hopefully going forward, if I can fit it in one video, I always will try to do that. But yeah, I'll let you know that definitely the one where we're putting gas generators in the last mission I did, that's definitely gonna be 2 videos because it was a long session, but it was great fun. So yeah, I've not been playing much, but I'm going to be playing some stuff this week, hopefully. I have a filming session this evening. Well, when this goes live, I should already be on my way to Will's, where we're going to be playing Pericle. Myself, Will, and Christopher will be sitting down and playing that, and that should be up on the channel at some point, probably March, with our schedule as it currently stands. What else can you be expecting to see this month? Well, I already said in my last video, so go back to that and see if I'm lying. We're going to be having some Stifling Dark. We're going to be having The Score. Star Trek Adventures is going to be up this month as well. Here is a Sanctum, which I didn't mention. That's dropping tomorrow, I think. So check that out. That's a pretty cool solo game. And just a bunch of fun games. Also, I've decided that weekends I'm just going to start dropping unboxing videos because I've got a load of them coming out. And I was just like, well, when am I going to fit them into the schedule? So I'm going to basically have every day this week, this month, you should be getting a video from Die Rollin, and weekends should be unboxing videos. So about 5 o'clock every night, there should be some Die Rollin content for you to consume or hold on to and consume at a later date, or, consume with your family, or however you want to consume this content. So that's everything really. Let's go on to the meat and potatoes of this one, or in this case, a waffle. And I just remembered I really wanted to, this week when I went shopping, pick up some waffles and just sit here and eat one for an entire episode. Not talk about anything, just eating a waffle at you. But the meat and potatoes this time, or the waffle, is going to be about nostalgia. I'm going to be talking about 10 games that I remember from my youth that had a significant impact on this guy. Now, I say significant impact. I will not remember some of the mechanics from these games, or maybe even how the game played, but I do remember the games and a general gist of what was going on in them, but they really stuck with me. When I was sitting down and trying to think of 10 games from my past, some of them came straight back. I was like, that game was fantastic. This is why. This is what you did in the game. Blah, blah, blah. Whereas other ones, I was like, there was that game. What was it called? Oh, yeah, it was that. And I can't really remember what you were doing in that, but it really stuck with me. So I'm going to go from the ones which I don't remember up to ones which I remember a lot and had the most impact. So we're going to start with a little game called Spyring. Now, I will preface this with saying that my father collected board games. Well, my parents collected board games. And they had a decent collection of various different board games out there. They had Monopoly, of course. Every household used to have that. But they also had Anti-Monopoly. They had Go for Broke. They had, Escape from Colditz. So when it came around to school, and at school they basically would have a day where you'd have like a games day, you'd brought in board games, and everyone else would be bringing in stuff like Cluedo or, Ludo, all the does. And I'd be bringing in the Jurassic Park board game, and people would be like, what the hell is this? Didn't even know this thing was a thing. So that was pretty fun. And so my dad had my parents have still a decent collection of board games. to kind of like pick out from. And Spiring was one that always stuck with me because it was just a interesting concept where you were playing spies and you had to collect certain kind of like information. So like microfilm, you had to get like little. I seem to recall getting little magnifying glasses. But yeah, essentially it was a set collection game. I think you went around a board, you collected stuff, and it's a race to try and get at the things before anybody else. That's all I remember from that. Apart from, I think there might have even been a decoder in it. I don't know if I'm lying about that, if I made that up, but that was something I remember, which was maybe I'm misremembering. But Spiring, I think it was just different to any other games I'd played. It was a spy theme. It wasn't like a James Bond spy kind of thing. It was very much kind of like Cold War, well, kind of like people in trench coats with disguises going around just taking bits. And I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. It kind of really, just really kind of, it was something I really enjoyed back in the day. So that was Spiring. Next one is Scoop. So Scoop, I believe, was a game from a long time ago. And the general idea from this was you were getting headlines. And you had, what made this game kind of in my top 10 was you had like a newspaper you belonged to. And you have a board. And in this board, you'd basically be trying to physically place different like kind of articles onto your newspaper kind of like headline, your front page for your newspaper. And it was just really fun, like trying to, find these different kind of like clips and put them onto edit them around and put them onto the right places. I seem to recall all the articles as well actually were actual articles, not like going into real specifics or anything, but they were like an actual article about, a dog saving someone or something like that. Or like a bank robbery, and you'd basically be trying to fit your page and get the most points. I don't really remember much more about it other than, physically trying to place these things, these kind of news clips onto the newspaper. And it just really sticks with me. It was just a fun thing I used to play with my family. Next, we're going to talk about a classic. So I'd say there's like a classic kind of trifecta of board games that everyone owned when I was a kid. You had your Monopoly, you had your Cluedo, you had your Scrabble. For me, there's a fourth one, which was Risk, but not everyone owned that. So I think Scrabble, Monopoly, Cluedo, they were the three that most people had. Also, people have Mousetrap. I never had that, and I was kind of like, always kind of wish I had that, but I didn't. But anyway, Cluedo. Of course, this has got to be on the list. Although it's not a game that really stands up to today when you have things like Awkward Guests, which is a fantastic kind of whodunit. It was a game that I really enjoyed playing in my childhood. Basically, when it came around to picking a board game out, I did want to play Monopoly. I'd want to play something else. And sometimes we would play Monopoly because my mum would be like, I fancy playing Monopoly. Or my dad would be like, let's play Monopoly. But yeah, Cluedo was something I always liked because I really enjoyed scary stuff as a kid. I still do. Even though I was a wimp, and I still am, I really enjoyed scary stuff. And like a murder mystery thing was just like something that was really fun and, exciting and stuff. Going to the rooms and, thinking somebody else could have been the murderer. Although, somebody wasn't actually, aware they did the murder. But I seem to recall that when we revealed who the murderer was, we always tried to have someone come up with an, why they did it kind of thing. It wasn't part of the game, but it's just something fun I think we added when we ever played that. But Cluedo always got a place in my heart. A fun game. Doesn't really stand up to today, in my honest opinion. There are other games out there. But yeah, back in the day, Cluedo was great fun. So next on my list, which I'm looking off just down there, is a game called Hotel. Which is now, I think, called Hotel Tycoon. This is Monopoly, but instead of Monopoly, you were trying to build hotels. Well, I guess Monopoly's that. So in this game, you had a board. So imagine a board, if you will. And on this board, you have a kind of like a little kind of path you're going around. You got a little car you're in. And when you stop on certain spaces, you can buy the hotel that's next to it. So there were portions of the board which were all kind of like next to the road, which would be for a specific hotel. And all the hotels would be themed around a different part of the world. So you had the biggest and best place, which was the President, which my brother always managed to get. No matter what you rolled, he would always get there. And that was the most expensive and the most impressive looking one. You had the Fujiyama, I think it was called, which was like the kind of Japanese kind of hotels and stuff. You had like loads of different kind of like hotels all over the place. But what made this game really fun was the fact that you basically were putting down 3D hotels onto the board. So like physical kind of like skyscrapers. So the president, for instance, El Presidente, or I can't remember what it's called, but I think it was the president. You'd put like a skyscraper down once you paid the money to build the kind of the minimum thing you need on there. And then the next one you build another taller skyscraper. Then the last thing on there was the biggest skyscraper. And whenever you had like these, expansions onto your hotel, it obviously cost people more money when they landed there. And the best thing was once you got your kind of your main hotel bits up, you could also then put down this piece of cardboard which fit in perfectly to the base of where these guys were. These different kind of hotel buildings were, and it would have like have the kind of the ground, so you'd have like a big swimming pool and things like that. And it was just so cool. It just looked great. It's the first game I feel like I noticed had table presence. It just looked great when you were playing it. It was fun. It was one that my brother and I would just play on our own so many times. I have so many good memories playing that. I don't think I really ever won it, but and I was always frustrated when my brother got the president. But it was always just a fun game, and I believe you can still get it. But it's called Hotel Tycoon now. When I was a kid, it was Hotel, and yeah, just a fantastic game with a really very simple rolling dice, moving around, buying property, land on someone else's property. You're gonna have to pay them money. So far, so Monopoly. But you also had to get planning permission as well. I remember that now. So you also had a dice which had like a red and a green spot on it, and maybe another color spot on it. And basically, you'd roll a dice every time you want to try and build something, and it would say, "No, you can't." If you've got a red dot, you couldn't build this thing. You didn't have planning permission. Green, you get to build it, and then the other color I think was yellow. If you got that, you could build it, but you'd have to pay like X amount extra. It's a little bribe or something. But yeah, Hotel was fantastic fun. If you're looking for quite a simple roll and move kind of game, Hotel Tycoon is still out there. You can pick that up, and it looks pretty much the same game from my youth. But yeah, great fun. So next, we're going to go for something a bit more nerdy. Blood Bowl. I don't like sports. I'm just putting it out there. I don't like sports. Deal with it, punks. I obviously am a bit of a nerd. And when I was at high school, all through my kind of school kind of career, if you didn't like sports, if you didn't like football specifically, you were bullied. I didn't like football. I didn't really like playing sports either. And yeah, I was bullied relentlessly for not enjoying sport. And these days, though, it doesn't seem like it's so much of a thing. You can be really into Marvel, and that's cool. So why is Blood Bowl on the list? It's a sport game. Well, it's not really a sport game. It was orcs versus humans on a big battlefield, big kind of American football pitch, and you were just smashing 7 shades of shit out of each other. For me, it was more about beating each other up than it was actually getting the ball to the other side. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a game that really stuck with me as a kid. I really enjoyed it. I remember buying some of the expansion miniatures. Morgenthau or something was a big ogre guy you could get. But yeah, I don't believe I did any painting with them. If I did, it would have been really bad and really awkward. But yeah, I just remember playing that a few times. And it was my first ever experience of going to a Warhammer kind of community event. Where there was a rugby club in Rugby where I'm from, and they were doing like an event there. My brother often went there because my brother collected the old Warhammer battle game, so he kind of would go along to that thing and play with some friends, and then he invited me to go along with Blood Bowl, and it was a really negative experience for me. I had a really horrible time there. I felt that there was a very gate-kept kind of community. Nobody really wanted to give me any time of day. And, I'd love to say that every time I've gone to do any Games Workshop / Warhammer event since has been a different experience, that I've been a lot more welcomed and kind of, it's been a warmer kind of greeting. But I've yet to play a game of Warhammer in a public space where I haven't just absolutely hated it. So yeah. So anyway, Blood Bowl though, me and my brother playing that, great fun. Had a blast, and it will always be something that I have fond memories of from my childhood. Would I play it again these days? Yeah, I'd probably play a game of it. But yeah, I don't think it would hit the shelves enough for me to own a copy. So there's that. So Blood Bowl from my childhood. Next is Risk. Risk was a game that I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this as a kid. I absolutely loved playing this with my mum, my dad, and my brother. It was sensational. I just loved the fact we were armies and we were fighting each other and we were rolling dice and you got to Australia, you could turtle up and you could kind of take over. My mum often won at the game, which because like nobody wanted to attack her because she'd get annoyed at you, and then it wouldn't be a nice atmosphere. My dad would have the worst dice rolls ever. Like he'd have like a huge army of like 10 kind of troops in a country, and my brother would have 2 troops and he'd move one of them in there, and my dad would be whittled down from 10 troops to like nothing, and it just had the worst dice rolls. But it was just really fun memories from my childhood of just having battles with your family, and it looked great on the table. It was the copy we had was a nice copy with different kind of colors for the miniatures and stuff, and they look pretty cool. And it's always been a game that's resonated with me. I've just always enjoyed Risk and variations on Risk. I don't actually own a copy of Risk. I used to own a copy of a game called Spheres of Influence, which I would say is the best version of Risk you can get. And I'm very hopeful that the person who made that is actually going to do a new Kickstarter for that, because honestly, Spheres of Influence, it was Risk but much better. You had oil, it was kind of like better Risk, but it wasn't too kind of like complex. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Spheres of Influence, here to talk about Risk. And Risk is always a game that has a lovely place in my heart. So Risk, one of my top 10 nostalgia games. Absolutely loved playing it as a kid. And you know what? I would sit down and play a game of that now. Wouldn't mind it at all. So next one, we're going to one game that hit the 90s and everyone loved it. Atmosphere. Or I think it was called Nightmare Overseas. Essentially what this was a video interactive horror board game. And I've already established I love scary stuff. I love horror in general. So the idea of sitting down at a table with my family, having to write down your fear, your greatest fear, putting it into a little coffin at the end of the board and closing it, then sitting down for an hour whilst a video is playing in the background that's acting as a timer and also as a kind of like events. It was just so cool. You had this guy who was a robed kind of figure, and he started off looking kind of like a regular kind of person, but as the time went down, his face changed, like started rotting away, and like you could start seeing his teeth showing and stuff. And he would basically like, it was obviously this is a video, it's a VHS, and every time you play this game, the events and the timing, everything happens the same way. The only thing was different is the cards you picked up on the board would be different. The idea was you basically had to get to the very end of the kind of like track before the timer ran out, and you'd have to open up the coffin, pull out, shuffle up the fears that were written down on a piece of paper in there, and if that fear was your fear, you lost. Otherwise, you won. And that was the general idea. You had to beat the gatekeeper, I think his name was, by getting to the end, not drawing your fear. And all the other people were kind of against you because they were trying to get there first. It was my brother's game, and we played it a lot. And I always remember they had adverts for other kind of videos they were bringing out, other expansions. And that's, I think, one of the first times I really realized there were expansions for board games. This had, a little trailer at the end for all these different videos. And they brought out a bunch of them, but it was always, careful, the mummy! And Elizabeth Battery, the kind of Battery, the vampire, and there was a witch and stuff. It was just so cool. The special effects they'd done, the effort they went into the game, it was fantastic. And if as a kid sitting down playing it, you would have the lights off in the room, would be sitting there focused on the board, and then suddenly out of nowhere you'd have, because we'd have the volume way up on the TV, and they'd have like a kind of thunder strike, and then you'd have like the gatekeeper on the screen shouting at you. He'd pick one person that he'd be like, who is the youngest? And you'd be like, put your hand up and stuff, and he'd say your name or something. And then he would say, you're a little maggot. And then every time that he came on, he'd pick on a little maggot or something. But it might be he had to roll a dice or something, and whoever got the lowest was the little maggot. I can't remember. But yeah, anyway, Atmosphere was a fantastic game for my childhood. It really, really stuck with me. And I know they've re-released it several times over the years. I think there's a digital version you can actually play at the moment. But yeah, Atmosphere, fantastic game. There was a pirate-themed one they did as well called Skull and Crossbones, which I had, where you had to get treasure chests. That was pretty cool as well, but not as good as Atmosphere. So we're on to the last three now. We're going to go back to Games Workshop, and probably one of the only games from Games Workshop that I was absolutely in love with, Space Crusade. Space Crusade, my word. This thing came out, I got it for Christmas. I was way too young to have a copy of Space Crusade because that game was demolished. I played with it nilly-willy, and by nilly-willy I basically mean I wasn't playing by the rules. I just moved them around, shoot people. Played several games of it, absolutely loved it. It was a dungeon crawler with like Space Marines in there, a big selection of different monsters to go up against. It was Hero Quest, which my brother had, and I enjoyed that, but it was cool. Hero Quest was all right. I was never really into the fantasy kind of stuff as a kid, really. But space stuff was cool. So when you had the idea of having these, tough kind of space marines going into this spaceship, shooting aliens and stuff, yeah, blew my mind as a kid, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I really hope they re-release Space Crusade at some point in some form. They did Blackstone Fortress, which I guess was as close as you get to that, maybe. But yeah, Space Crusade to me was amazing, fantastic board game. Okay, on to the last two. We're going to go for one which has been around for years in various different forms, but I know it as Crossbows and Catapults. This was a dexterity game, before I knew what a dexterity game was, where you had two kind of like castles on the board, and it was like on the floor, sorry. We had some Viking longboats, some kind of like catapults, and these things all had elastic bands and discs in them. And essentially what you were trying to do, you were trying to like destroy the other people's kind of ships and castles and stuff. And they all had these little kind of like shields you'd hang up on the castle and you put on the boat, and you take it in turns, basically firing discs off at each other. The catapult would like launch off these discs and smash down like bricks and stuff out the castle, hopefully knocking off those shields. And the ships themselves had this little kind of hidden mechanism in there where you could kind of flick, it just shoot this disc as fast as it could out at the enemies. And it was just fantastic fun. Not much to really say about it other than it was just a great game. I think there's a game called Castle Feud, which is essentially the same thing. And they've done crossbow and catapults in various different forms over the years. Like I say, they've re-released it multiple times. But yeah, it was just a great game as a kid. Just lining up your armies either side and just pelting each other with these kind of discs. Great fun. Finally, the last game on my list is actually also the top game on my list. And I know I just said when I was talking about Space Crusade, the fantasy wasn't my thing. This is a fantasy game. So I was aware of Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. I think my brother maybe played a couple of things with some friends. But before I was like a teenager, I was aware of it, but I didn't really know what it's about. Anyway, this game came out called Dragon Strike. It was by TSR, and it was the gateway game to role-playing in my mind, because someone had to be a dungeon master in it. Now, I know I played Hero Quest at this point, I think, but this had a video that came with it, with a kind of dramatization, and you can actually watch this video on YouTube. It's cheesy. The guy who plays the dungeon master wears a black polo throughout, and he kind of looks like a floating head at points. But essentially, this guy in the floating head DM is basically talking to you to say, welcome, you are trying to do this. You are playing a barbarian, you're playing a dwarf. and he explains how role-playing games work. This was a board game role-playing game hybrid. It was like Hero Quest, but better. It had two double-sided boards, which had such a fantastic artwork on them. They were really, as a kid, really inspiring. They looked amazing. This game came with a D20. I had never seen a D20 before. I remember it now. An orange D20 with black kind of like coloring on it for the numbers. And oh my God, the whole thing was fantastic. My brother sat down, he played the DM, I played the heroes. We went through it and we completed the entire thing. It was just fantastic. It was so cool. I loved the kind of cheesiness of the VHS. I loved the gameplay. They had loads of different kind of monsters in there. There was like a man scorpion, and I remember he was great on the video. There were bugbears in there, just a bunch of loads of different kind of things I'd never heard of before, and it just really captured my imagination. I loved the heroes in it. I loved the monsters. There was even a dragon in there. And the artwork on all of the boards was fantastic. So much so, when I was thinking about this, I was like, man, I wonder whether Dragon Strike is still a thing. And there is actually a copy on eBay, which I'm sorely tempted at getting. Missing just one wing from a dragon. But yeah, I probably won't get it. I've got so many games to cover as it is. But yeah, Dragon Strike, for me, it won my childhood. It's a game that I often think about. It's a game that there's other dungeon crawlers that have come out since that will probably bury this game. But if I was going to decide between playing the newer updated Hero Quest or that original Dragon Strike all the way. It was just so immersive and just fun. But yeah, anyway, they were the top 10 games that I can recall from my childhood that had the biggest impact on me. So I'm going to read them out again. Spyring, Scoop, Cluedo, Hotel, Blood Bowl, Risk, Atmosphere, Space Crusade, Crossbows and Catapults, and of course Dragon Strike. So they're my top 10. Did any of you guys play any of those games? Let me know in the comments below if you thought the games I mentioned suck, or if you think, yeah, do you know what, Adam? They were fantastic. What else did you play as a kid? Like, what games really meant a lot to you back then and still maybe mean a lot to you right now? I'd love to know. And yeah, there is one other thing I'd like to kind of put out there. It's kind of more of a plea for help, really. Don't worry, this isn't going to turn dark. When I was coming up with the games from my childhood, I recalled 2 card games. And they were basically the same card game, but a different kind of setting. But I cannot find anything about them online anywhere. So if you are in a detective kind of mood and you can find out what this game is called for me, I would be forever grateful, because I'd love to source a copy of this or just read up on it and just remember this game. I definitely didn't make it up. I remember getting it from a co-op toy store, which was in town. No longer exists. But yeah, they used to have some different kind of board games in there, and these were in there. I believe they were called Framed or something like that. And essentially what it was a murder mystery. And you were basically making a film using the cards. So each card you had was a scene in the film. So I remember one of them was set on a train, and you'd basically be putting down these cards in order to tell the story. So you'd have basically like a guy on the top of the train running, and the next one you'd have like somebody pulling out like a picture of someone getting a gun out. I don't remember what the actual gameplay was, but it was just a storytelling card game from what I recall. But like I say, I cannot find record of this anywhere. It must have been must have been the 90s to 99, I'd say, between that kind of period. So if you can find out what that game is called, like I say, I think there was a couple of them. I can't remember what the other one was, but they were both murder mystery themed ones. You're basically telling the story of a murder movie. So yeah, if you can find out what they are for me, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. And it'd be great to see if you guys can detect this out for me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my Wednesday Waffle. Hopefully I didn't waffle on too long. And honestly, please let me know about your nostalgic games from your childhood, because I'd love to know what games you played that you absolutely loved. There's a few more I could mention, but this isn't the top 20 games because I could go on. Anyway, I've been the ever excited Adam. Thank you so much for always supporting Die Rolling, and please stay tuned for all the lovely content we've got coming up over February, March, and beyond. Until next time, guys, stay safe or Die Rolling.